All right, it's 1 o'clock here in Philadelphia, and so I'm going to start, and I'm going to start by pretending that it's already April 2nd and that it is siesta time in China, and I understand that this address is being delivered during siesta to our alumni in China. So my name is Bob Francis. I'm your Vice President for University Facilities. I'll be presenting on the state of the campus master plan, and because it is siesta, my challenge, of course, is not to put you to sleep. I'm going to be talking about Drexel, the master plan, the strategic plan, where we are right now in 2014, the things that we've accomplished that have gotten us to this point, but more importantly, the transformations that are coming up very soon on the campus to move us forward as we fill out our strategic plan. So on the screen you see an image that's taken from the new Papadakis Integrated Sciences Building. This happens to be the cover for the strategic plan. There is an accompanying document for the campus master plan, and you'll see some images that come from that document today. From the strategic plan, Drexel has 6 primary strategic initiatives, and they'll show here on the board. I won't read them off for you, but I will make the observation that points number 4 and 5, creating the innovation nexus for research, technology transfer, and economic development, and number 5, doing so in the nation's most dynamic transportation hub. Those are the main objectives of the strategic, or the campus master plan, and you'll see the results of those efforts today as I go through these slides. A few elements to begin with that kind of lead into the master plan. This shows you where we are in terms of enrollment. Right now, we're in the middle of this graph at the point of between SP2 and SP3, and you'll see we're right on target in terms of total enrollment. This is all in. It includes the medical school, it includes the law school, online learning, graduates and undergraduates. You can see that we're between 25 and 26,000 right now, and moving along toward a target in another 10 years that will equate almost to 35,000 students. So I have 2 images that will be more familiar. The one on the right certainly more familiar to an American audience. The one on the left to all of those of you who have been here in University City. And the theme here, Sartor Resartus, really refers to a Thomas Carlyle document from the mid-19th century, which translates into the tailor retailored, or in our case here at Drexel, it's the university remaking itself, transformation. The image on the right of the screen is a very famous image from New York City, taken in the early part of the 20th century, looking down Fifth Avenue at Madison Square, and this is taken at 5th Broadway and 23rd. It was what originally was the Fuller Brush Building. It's now known as the Flatiron Building to all of those of you who have been in New York. It was the great image for the transformation from the 19th into the 20th century, and so in many ways this view of Lancaster Avenue at 34th and Lancaster, the image on the left side, is the transformation that's taking place at Drexel from the old campus to the new campus. And so here's the res artis, the retailored part. This particular image is looking north on 33rd Street, next to the Haggerty Library. And this particular image was from the master plan award, which was made by the Society for College and University Planners, that named our campus plan the best campus plan in the country for an existing campus. And this image was a watercolor from the master plan, but we have executed this project. So if you're on the campus today, you'll see that the library looks very much like this, including the cookie truck, which is right there on the right of the screen. A few things very quickly about what we're trying to accomplish over the next 10 years. We think that we'll build out somewhere between 6 and 10 million gross square feet. I can't translate that very quickly in my mind into square meters, but it's pretty big, maybe 1 million square meters. And 1 out of every 4 square feet will be for our own purposes, educational and general purposes. 1 out of every 4 square feet will be for student purposes like housing, recreation, gathering spaces, and the like. And fully half of the plan is for offices, hotels, retail, commercial space for companies that do business with Drexel and want to be part of the innovation neighborhood that you hear me describe. So a campus master plan is bigger than just the campus, and it includes more than simply our educational needs. What we're trying to do is build a community, a prosperous, mixed-use community that appeals to the creative class and makes more Chinese, for example, want to come here and be with us in Philadelphia because we offer something that appeals and has value to them. A few goals that the campus plan is based on. First, bringing the campus to the street so that there's life and light and safety and something to do and places to bring people together. And so here we see that we've identified those places on the plan, places where we can draw the community together in an interdisciplinary way. Another goal is to expand the innovation community, which for us now starts right out in front of 30th Street Station, looking west, because we own all of the property between Market Street and the railroad from 30th Street all the way out. And I've got a big announcement to make to you today, which will extend campus boundaries greatly to the west and make this idea of an innovation community not just an idea that applies to the 10 or 12 acres west of 30th Street Station, but now we have another big parcel that we want to talk about that is west of 36th Street. When we started the plan, the idea was to draw 3 academic spheres. The one in the center has its center at 33rd and Market. This is the place that most students will tell you is the center of the campus. On the right, at the center of the original campus, or the engineering or the technical campus, is something that older students will remember. And now we have a new circle developing to the west, where we've just completed the College of Media Arts and Design building at 3501 Market. And so this is our western boundary now. Each of these circles is 1/4 mile in radius, represents the comfortable 5-minute walk, which is the organizing principle for the entire plan. And it's not so much the center of the circles that's interesting, but the interesting thing is what happens at the edges. The light yellow in the center north of the screen at 12 o'clock, the light yellow shows you where the traditional part of the residential community has been. We own 3,750 beds between Race Street and Powelton to the north, 32nd Street to 34th on the west. And we've really bumped up against and impacted the community in ways that haven't always been good either for us or for the community. But now we've got this opportunity within this yellow ellipse to start to develop a new student neighborhood. Now, of course, as time goes by, the neighborhood won't be perfectly elliptical in shape, And as it turns out, we have a couple of projects that are changing the shape of that ellipse, but the principle applies that we're going to have a new student neighborhood. Certainly a goal here is to increase density. The light blue shows the boundaries of the University City campus, which is interestingly not very dense historically, but is getting increasingly dense. And when we look across the river to Rittenhouse Square, we see all the characteristics that we would like to have here on the main campus. And so it's not just density of people. Rittenhouse Square is twice as dense as Mantua. So zip code 19104 is only half as dense as zip code 19103. It has half the disposable income, and not surprisingly, it doesn't have half of the amenities. So when we look across the river, we see all the qualities that we want to create here on the campus. Again, all for the purpose of making this a vibrant and exciting place for scholars and students to want to come spend their lives, or at least a portion of their lives that are relevant when they're students, and to do it within the boundaries of this wonderful innovation neighborhood. So this is a presentation about transformation. I've used the word a couple times, and I'll use it several more times. There was a prelude leading up to the campus master plan, which was published in 2012. And before we launched the new master plan, we were working off of a master plan from 2007 to 2012. And during that period, we opened Millennium Hall, a 500-bed residence hall, which increased the ability to house students on campus up to 3,750 at that time. So making Drexel an increasingly residential campus was important, and you may know that we've since put in a sophomore housing requirement, which has even made it a more dense experience here, where we have many more students living in campus-owned or sponsored housing. And we opened the recreation center, doubling the size of the traditional Papadakis athletic center, and doing all of those things that I talked about in the goals, bringing the campus to the street, adding light, activity, and making Drexel a safe place. After we published the master plan, we identified some things that everyone agreed that we should do right away. And so we set about doing those things. I'm not going to hit all of the things that are on this slide. I'll hit 4 of the big projects. And so we immediately constructed the Integrated Sciences Building, which opened in September 2011. This is a LEED Gold certified structure, primarily housing the biology department, and including what is still North America's largest biofilter wall. We opened the Urban Center for the College of Media Arts and Design in September of 2012. There's a second building behind it on Filbert Street, 3401 Filbert. And this has been in operation now for over a year, surprisingly. Chestnut Square opened this past September between 32nd and 33rd on Market Street. 869 beds of student housing, 20,000 square feet of retail space, primarily food and beverage. It includes a Shake Shack, a Joe's, Coffee, Sabino, and a number of other establishments. So this is open and operating. Also in 2013, we renovated Stratton Hall for the Department of Psychology. You can see that last September was a really big period for us. We opened a lot of new projects at that time. And in Stratton Hall, we were particularly happy because for the first time in the history of the campus, we had consolidated the psychology department into a single building. And of course, it's in the heart of the arts and sciences part of the campus, which once again is important. The idea again is to get everyone together and put them in a position so they can live 80% of their life within that comfortable 5-minute walk that I talked about a little bit earlier. Also in September, we opened Jerry LeBeau Hall for the LeBeau College of Business. This was a really big move for us. There are 550 seats in 17 classrooms in that building, and of course we needed every single one of those seats. They were full from the day the building opened, and we needed them in order to be able to teach the classes and all of the new students that you saw on one of the first slides that I showed you. So those are the things that we did right away because there was universal agreement around those projects that they were very important for moving the campus forward. So now we're partway into the 2012 to 2017 period, and this particular slide again is taken out of the publication of the campus master plan that shows the 10 or 12 projects that we intended to work on. And once again, I won't hit all of them, but I will touch on 4 or 5 of the big ones. And I think what you'll see as I go through this particular image and go around the circle and describe the projects to you, you'll quickly realize that we have completed almost everything that was in the plan from 2012 to 2017. So in a peculiar sense, we've actually overshot our plan, and we need to come back and reform our thinking, but I'll get to that later in the presentation. So within the current time period for 2012 to 2017, first of all, we repurposed Nesbitt Hall. This could very well be past tense because just last month we reopened the building after 8 months of renovation, and the Nesbitt Hall had been formerly used by the Westfall College of Media Arts and Design, and of course that college moved to the new urban center at 3501 Market Street, emptying out Nesbitt Hall, which has been renovated now for the School of Professional Health. So all of the floors were occupied and the faculty moved from Center City, the Center City campus, here to join the rest of the undergraduate community in West Philadelphia at the University City campus. So this building now houses the School of Public Health. And we're taking a look at the building they vacated, which is in Center City. That's Bellet Hall. We're looking at repurposing that. There are 2 other academic units in Center City. The College of Medicine is there, and the College of Nursing and Health Professions also is there. Lancaster Square is a project that is currently under construction at 34th and Lancaster. It's the site of the former Hess laboratories, the Hess Engineering Laboratories, which were demolished last August and September. And it's also the site that in one of those very early slides where the skateboarder was coming down the street with the 7-Eleven on one side of the street and the Hess building on the other side of the street. Well, you're looking at what is being built in its place on that site. It's a 1,300-bed residence hall, which includes another 20,000 square feet of retail. All of these projects we're doing now are mixed use. We're not putting up any single-purpose buildings anymore. So the residence hall needs to be accompanied with other offerings, and in this particular case, again, street-level retail is the theme. The idea is to animate Lancaster Avenue, the kickoff of Lancaster Avenue in a way that hasn't been done historically. And so that retail space is on the right side of the screen in tan and brown color. And then there's a low-rise building on the left side of the screen next to the tower, which will be a new dining hall, a new university dining hall. The Hans Schumacher Dining Center in the Priest McAllister courtyard area down by Chestnut has continued to serve as the only cafeteria, the only central food service facility that Drexel has, but clearly we can't continue to feed the campus there, the part of the campus that wants a traditional meal plan. The Hans Schumacher this year was 30 or 40% over its design capacity. And so when Lancaster Square opens, we'll have a 22,000 square foot dining hall there that has a capacity for 400 seats at any one time. And of course that will be much closer to all of the residential housing that's up the hill, so to speak, from Market Street in the direction of Powell. This, is, as I said, is under construction, and despite the harsh winter conditions, we're still on target for a September 2015 opening, which is a bare 18 months from now. So 18 months from now, we'll have an enormous new complex opening with another 1,300 students living right here. And all of this, of course, starts to get us to the density of people and the density of income that we want to have here to support amenities, all of which make Drexel a safer and more lively place, transforming Drexel from what it had been in the past. An exciting announcement coming up very soon. By the time you hear this broadcast on April 2nd, our trustees will have met in March, and they will have approved our proceeding with the construction of a university hotel. This is at the northwest corner of 33rd and Chestnut, directly across the street from the Integrated Sciences Building, and in the location where our intercultural center has been. That intercultural center will move into the basement of what many of you remember as the academic building, the problem-solving building. And we'll build this university hotel in its place. The design is intended to be a university-oriented boutique hotel with about 190 beds, conference space, high-end restaurant on the ground level, and not the big general purpose hotel that you would find either at, say, a Hyatt or a Marriott. This is a much more intimate scale with university-like finishes, kind of a bookstore feel to it. And so we're very excited about this. And again, we expect to have trustee approval to proceed in March, at which point the developer will start to move forward with the approval process. Anticipate having this structure completed and online sometime in 2015. I don't have a precise date for you as we speak today. I said to you earlier that one of the interesting places we found ourselves was that 2 years into this 2012 to 2017 time period for the master plan. The master plan is really conceived as a series of 5 or 6 5-year increments that would take us all the way out to 2021. 2041. But the first increment, 2012 to 2017, was exciting because everyone agreed on the things that needed to be done, and all of the elements of timing came together that allowed us to move forward. And so the elements of timing include things like enrollment continuing to grow, the economic recovery, particularly in West Philadelphia, continuing to take place, and support continuing to come to us from the private investment community. Drexel enjoys a really unique set of circumstances right now in that the private investor community is eager to partner with us. So the two residential projects that I described, Chestnut Square between 32nd and 33rd along Chestnut, and now Lancaster Square at 34th and Lancaster, both of those projects are public-private partnerships between us and a very large real estate investment corporation called American Campus Communities. They're the largest real estate investment trust that specializes in campus housing in the country. And they have invested their money in these facilities, $96 million of investment in Chestnut Square and some $170 million to be invested in Lancaster Square. All of this private money, which is theirs, none of it is university money, and all of this is at an arm's length distance, which protects Drexel's balance sheet. It's not considered debt by the rating agencies, and of course this is very good for Drexel in terms of continuing to achieve its budget goals. We needed some interim way of thinking about the master plan, though, so that we could continue to move ahead with major initiatives on kind of an interim basis. So what I'm going to show you now is the thinking, the major components of the 2014 to 2019 period. And I'm going to hit 5 ideas for you. And of course, this is out of a large number of ideas. But I'm going to hit 5 major ideas, including one that is so new that it won't actually be announced publicly until tonight. So I'm giving you information now that's not publicly known, but it will be publicly known by the time you hear this on April 2nd. So first is the repurposing of 3101 Market Street. So if you remember your West Philadelphia geography, there's the elevated train line, which we call the High Line, running right next to the engineering buildings on the campus along what otherwise would be 31st Street. When you emerge from 30th Street Station, you're looking at what used to be a big newspaper printing business. The Philadelphia Bulletin was printed here long ago before they went out of business. There's a building in front, which I'll get to in a second, called the Bulletin Building. And now west of the High Line, the low-slung 2-story building, 3101 Market, which historically housed the Philadelphia Parking Authority, and the City of Philadelphia archives are still in the basement. All of this is being repurposed now as the first initiative in the innovation neighborhood, and we have a new academic initiative called the Institute for Energy and the Environment, which will be assembled in this building and on this site. So you will have offices and research laboratories combined here, along with space for startup businesses, more established businesses. And so we're going to create this kind of melting pot, Drexel style, which you see in other places. In Cambridge, for example, in Kendall Square at the Cambridge Innovation Center, and in other buildings, you'll see new startup companies in one building next to Google in the building next to it, and then next to university buildings on either side. And so the Drexel approach is going to be to blend all of these communities and all of these partners into a single space, and 3101 Market will be that place. At the same time, we have an initiative underway right now to look at all of the university's research laboratories, and particularly focusing on physics, chemistry, engineering, and the environmental sciences, particularly represented by biodiversity, earth and the environment, and the kind of work that's being done by the scientists who are at the Academy of Natural Sciences. This building has two parts. There's the pink part, which is on the left side of the inset diagram, and then the rest of it on the right side of the diagram. You can think of this as being a wet side and a dry side. The wet side is 2 stories, and in the pink on the left, that's about 50,000 square feet of wet research laboratory space, and then supported by 60,000 square feet of office and dry laboratory space on the right side of the image. We have architects hired and working with our faculty right now on programming the space. We have the money available to invest, and so as soon as this programming is completed, sometime this spring or summer, we'll commence design, and by this very same time next year, I expect that we will be under construction in this building. So the repurposing of 3101 Market Street accomplishes several goals. One is to push forward the research initiative. Second is to really launch the innovation neighborhood in a big way. And then the third thing is to solidify Drexel's emerging position as a leader in energy and environmental research here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which interestingly has the largest known energy reserves of any state in the United States, thanks to the Marcellus Shale project. I spoke a little bit earlier about the Bulletin building. This is the building you see when you come out of 30th Street Station and look straight to the west. It's 3001 Market. It turns out that there's kind of a backstory to this building, but a lot of the original drawings were lost. All of the original structural drawings for the building were lost. And so for a long time, people thought that the foundations were substantial enough to handle perhaps 1 or 2 more floors, and that wasn't considered to be an economically attractive thing to do, to add only 1 or 2 floors. But 2 years ago, we went back and instead of relying on assumptions in the calculations, we paid for some testing and to have the carrying capacity of the foundations reevaluated. And it turns out that we can add 5 or 6 floors to the Bulletin building, which would take what's now it's a nice building, but it's only a 250,000 square feet. And in the innovation neighborhood, we need much larger buildings for a reason that I'll explain in a minute. Finding that the building had the ability to carry another 5 or 6 floors was really important, because now we know that the Bulletin building can be expanded to 500,000 or 600,000 square feet, which will make it large enough to hold a position in the innovation neighborhood. And the reason that's important is that the property we own from 30th Street all the way out to 32nd, from Market Street up to the tracks, now has central business district zoning. So under the zoning codes here in Philadelphia, without asking for any special permission, we have the right to build anywhere from 6.5 to 8.5 million square feet on this property before applying for bonuses that would allow us to build more. We think the carrying capacity of the property is actually much more than that. But what that would imply is that all of the buildings in the innovation neighborhood would have to be 18, 20, 30 stories or even more tall. And of course, there's plenty of precedent for that going on right here in West Philadelphia. Right now we have the Sierra Center at nearly 30 stories. The new residential tower that's being built by Brandywine Property Trust and the Campus Crest Apartment Corporation, the structure at 30th Street and Chestnut is going to be 33 stories tall, and the Sierra South project was just announced. That will be 30th Street and Walnut. That will be a 47-story tower. So West Philadelphia is going vertical very rapidly, and the only way to really realize the full carrying capacity of our property is to build up. And so what I'm showing here in this image, an 8-story building, this is attractive because the construction costs are not very high. But this building would be in an area that really wants to be much taller and much more dense than what even this image would represent. But this is a very attractive project for us financially. And so this is the second initiative. So I've talked about developing the innovation neighborhood, and so now I want to expand this to more than just a discussion about Market Street up to the tracks and 30th Street out to JFK Boulevard. You know that we have a site that is along Chestnut Street between 30th and 31st. It was the old Abbott's Dairy site. Many of you, if you had cars when you were here, you would have called it the F lot. So that lot is available to us for development. We have acquired the Firestone property at 32nd and Market Street. That is now ours and is available for development. So all of this area adds up to a little bit over 13 acres, 12 to 13 acres, and comprises the innovation neighborhood. Going back to one of the first slides where I showed the approximate square footage we intended to build, that added up to anywhere from 6 to 10.5 million square feet. Well, it's all in the area that's encompassed in the C, D, and E space that runs roughly between Chestnut and the tracks, 30th Street and 32nd Street. So this is a major initiative. What we're doing right now as we speak is meeting with potential master developers. We have scheduled interviews with 6 corporations who develop on a large scale, and we're talking to them at this point to get their ideas and to find out what their level of interest might be in moving forward with us in this development effort. We're just really at the qualification stage. We have not invited proposals for anyone. And at the same time, we have an initiative underway now with the Amtrak Rail Corporation. We are sponsoring a study. Drexel and Amtrak are the lead principals involved in this study, and what we're looking at is the air rights over the SEPTA and the Amtrak tracks. Now, that's about a 55 or 60 acre site which is undeveloped, and certainly the future of Philadelphia rests with that very important piece of property. Other cities have done this, have built over their rail yards. New York has done it. Washington, D.C. is the most recent example. Chicago has done it. And this effort has been looked at many times in Philadelphia over the past 80 years, and now we're going to go back and look at it. And so what I have to tell you today that's very exciting, I'm giving you this presentation. It's about 1:30 my time right now, and at 6 o'clock this evening there's going to be a public announcement that the Drexel proposal, in concert with our development partner, which is the Biomed Corporation, has been selected as having the successful proposal for acquiring the University City High School site, which is shown here in this image. This is kind of a cool image, by the way, because this is the 1962 plot plan for the area that's bounded by 36th Street on the east, 38th on the west, Filbert to the south, and the combination of Lancaster and Paladin to the north. This is a 14-acre site. After 1962, somewhere around 1970, the University City High School was built on the site. The School Reform Board here in Philadelphia just went through a process of inviting proposals for the use of the site, and there will be a public announcement this afternoon which awards Drexel and Biomed as the successful proposers. So this is a kind of a happy moment for us, because what it does is give us an innovation neighborhood to develop on the east, and now it's bracketed and balanced by a development opportunity on the west, where we can realize our interest in developing public education and in working with the neighborhoods in terms of our desires to be civically engaged. So this is really important in terms of securing the university's development future, and also of continuing to be a major economic engine for the city of Philadelphia and for the larger region. So in some ways you can say that you heard it first, because it's in fact true. So I have just a few more minutes to wrap this up, and my presentation today really has been about looking forward to the future and about transformation. And we want to go from what we were in the past to what we define ourselves to be in the future. It's Sartor Resartus. It's the tailor retailer. So we want to go from being this, which is a flat suburban look, to an intensely urban, dense, exciting, safe, fun place to live and work and study. We want to go from this is the old image at 33rd and Chestnut, to this with a vibrant new boutique hotel. We want to transform ourselves from this bleak image that's taken from 30th Street Station looking into the distance. You can see the back of the Armory in the distance. We own all of the property on both sides of the street, and we want to turn it into something like this. We want to transform the rail yards from looking like this, a bleak reference to another era, which was the 19th and the 20th centuries, an industrial north that we really don't reflect any longer, to something like this. Which, these images, of course, are watercolors, and they're meant to be sort of misty-eyed views of what reality could be. But if you look very carefully, you'll see the Museum of Art up at about the 130 position in the image. You'll see the train shed for SEPTA in the lower end of the image. The street that cuts through actually represents 31st Street. So this is very much to scale, and it very much reflects what we can do and what we want to build out there. So I have reached the end of the images, and I'll go back to the last one just so you're not looking at a dark screen while I wrap up. Again, I want to say it's a pleasure. Again, I'm Bob Francis, your Vice President for University Facilities, and I've been delighted to take just a few minutes of your time and tell you where we have been and where we're headed, and most importantly, where we're headed with this university master plan. So thank all of you very much, and enjoy the rest of your siesta and the rest of your workday.